This is Research Design and Classifications of Data by Luke Ashdown. Research designs. Now, experimental design, this looks at how the independent variable, which is the one you're changing in the experiment, affects the dependent variable, which is the one you're measuring. Each version of the independent variable is a condition, and that dependent variable is a measurable outcome. Cross-sectional case study. This involves a range of different people that have different ages, genders, etc. from the population to get a broad aspect of research. A case study, this is where you investigate something in particular, however it is over a long period of time. Longitudinal, this involves measuring the same variables over a vast period of time, such as measuring VO2 max output. Comparative, this is where two or more things are compared by the researcher and analysed to find out more about them. Experimental research designs. Repeated measures. This is where you repeat the same test with the same person, however under different conditions to compare the results. Independent groups. This is a test that is carried out between two totally different groups of people, such as sports science students and maths students. And matched pairs, this is where tests are carried out on people that have similar characteristics. An example of this would be a test on someone from the first year of sports science and someone from the second year of sports science. Research sources. Now, primary data, this is data that you go out and collect yourself personally through methods like questionnaires or field or lab-based tests. However, this can be biased towards your own views and opinions because obviously you've created it, and you also may not have the required resources to carry out the research itself. Now, secondary data is data that has already been collected by other people that you can use in your research. This can be in the form of books or on the internet, and this, however, can be biased towards the researcher, or you might not understand it for yourself. So therefore, can you really rely on this research? Because primary data is obviously more valid in this case to the data that you actually want to collect, because secondary data might be testing something slightly different to the research that you want to carry out. Field-based data collection is data collected in the actual environment that simulates a game scenario. For example, a field test for an endurance runner would them being outside doing an endurance run and being tested from there. This data is a lot cheaper than lab-based data collection and can be a lot more accessible because you don't need all of the fancy expensive equipment. However, it can have low internal validity, meaning you can't control all of the variables, for example the weather, the temperature, etc. However, this means that the reliability may be affected in such a way that it would cause it to decrease. Lab-based data collection involves collecting data in a controlled environment where you can control all of the variables so that you can concentrate solely on your dependent variable and the data in which you want to collect. This means it is a high level of internal validity because only the independent variable affects the dependent variable. However, this does not simulate the natural environment, and the equipment used can be very expensive, such as the treadmill for the VO2 max test, or other tests such as that. Classifications of data. So, discrete data is a type of data that is collecting using closed questions, where often one-word answers are enough. They're very isolated answers and do not give much information. However, it's quick and an easy way of collecting information is does not tend to be numerical, so it's a vocal answer. Then there is also nominal data. This is a type of data that is controlled through putting the participants into different categories, whether it be on height, age, weight, gender, stuff like that. It doesn't necessarily give that much data depending on the group. For example, you can have, for a height category, a height of between 5 and 6 foot. That doesn't necessarily give you a lot of data because you can obviously be within that category. It's not very specific. However, it is very easy to count how many people are in that category and stuff like that to collect your data. Then there's also ordinal data. This type of data is collected in rank order, so ascending or descending order. There is no actual value given during this data collection method, and doesn't indicate the difference between the height levels. For example, if you were measuring height. So this method includes a median, so the middle value of your data is also identified. Then continuous data. This type of data collection gives you numerical values, and the data can be any number up to any decimal places. For example, the Usain Bolt world record at the Olympics for the 100 meters was 9.69 seconds. That is continuous data because it's a numerical value, and it also has decimal places. Now, continuous data can be split down into two separate concepts. There's interval data. This is collected based on a scale and has equal intervals of measurements, and there is no actual zero value. So the measurements can go into minus numbers. An example of this would be temperature on a thermometer. Then there's also ratio. This data collection has proportional equal units of measurement, and the scales cannot be a negative value, so therefore it has a zero value and it has to be above zero. An example of this would be height, because you cannot have a height below zero. So as you can see on the screen, I now have a table of many different aspects and types of data which have been collected. So we'll start off with the sprint. So this column is continuous ratio data because the data is numerical, and there's an absolute zero because you can't have a sprint time that has a negative value. So moving on to the standing broad jump then, or the SBJ. This is an ordinal type of data because there isn't an actual value given. The people are arranged in rank order, ranging from people who jumped the furthest to people who jumped the least distance. Moving around again, we have height. So this column is continuous ratio data, as the data has proportional equal units of measure. Obviously the data, as you can see, is numerical and there are decimal places. There is also equal intervals in between the data because they're all in the same decimal place, and there is an absolute zero. Now the smoker/non-smoker category is discrete data, and this is because obviously that has been acquired by closed questions such as are you a smoker or non-smoker, and then they answer with a one-word simple answer. Now the sit and reach test, this is nominal data because people are being arranged into categories, and there isn't any numerical data given on what they actually achieved. It's just into categories of their achievement. So weight change, this is continuous interval data because there are equal units of measurement and there is also minus values in the data itself, meaning that it can't be ratio data. So the gender then. This is also discrete data because closed questions were asked to achieve the data collected, and therefore no nominal data was given. So age. This column is continuous ratio data because the obviously age is numerical and there is equal intervals between them. Also, there is an absolute zero because you can't have a negative age value. Data collection methods. Now, a focus group is used as a group discussion on a particular topic, organised for research purposes where discussion from the group is required. Some advantages of this is that you can get a variety of opinions from around the group, and therefore this makes it more reliable because you have an accurate cross-section of what the population's opinions on that subject are. Now, a disadvantage of this method is that if the participants don't really know each other, they may feel slightly uneasy and therefore they might not wish to discuss their feelings and opinions openly. Another disadvantage is that the interviewees may just go along with what the rest of the group thinks because they don't want to stand out or something like that, which may affect the reliability of your data. Now, structured interviews. These are verbally asked questions where a list of previously prepared questions are asked with little or no variation, so they all link to each other. Advantages of this method are that the interviewer knows exactly what to ask, and it is unlikely that there will be any pauses within the interview because the interviewer knows what's coming next. Disadvantages include that the interviewer cannot ask any more questions, so they can't go off track if they feel that it might be helpful. They can't because it's a structured interview. Now, unstructured interviews start with an opening question, and the interviewer will then progress based upon the initial answer from the interviewee. Advantages of this method is that you're able to get much more personal answers from the interviewee, and because of this, this can lead to getting a broader range of answers, and therefore that can help with your research. A disadvantage of this would be that because there aren't any set questions, the interview could get a bit off topic, which could be useless information to the researcher. Semi-structured interviews is a method that is a rough guide so the researcher can ask questions, but however, unlike structured, they are able to probe further questions and get more detail into a topic that they might feel might be suitable. A disadvantage of this method, however, is that there is an issue with validity because the researcher cannot tell if the interviewee is telling the truth or not, and that the interview may just give answers just to please the interviewer or say what they think they want to hear. Non-participant observation is an observational method where the researcher attends group events and records the observations without taking part in the group's activities. The group has knowledge that the observer is present, but they are inactive, so they can't get involved in anything. Questionnaires are used when you want to find out large amounts of information from either a specific person or a group of people. However, due to the questions commonly asked, such as how much exercise do you do a week, the information may not be detailed, or it might be slightly biased because people don't want to look bad. There are two types of questions. First is the open, which answers can be given in depth and elaborated upon. And the other type is closed, where commonly one-word answers such as yes and no are enough to answer the question suitably. That has been research design and classifications of data. Thank you.